And yet, one of the very few remaining taboo subjects that we don't talk about is death. And I could never understand that. You know, and I guess because I was raised on a farm a little bit, and I saw animals born and animals slaughtered and crops planted and crops harvested, I was a bit more accustomed to the cycle of death. It was never really a daunting thing for me. But I'm getting, I did some research, and I looked back in the, what are those things called, demographics. Do you know in 1851 in our country here, 87% of the population lived in rural Canada. They lived on farms. They were very much a part of the cycle of life and death. They got lots of practice. And, no, really, think about it. They got lots of practice and lots of exposure to the cycle, the very natural cycle of life and death. So in 1951, which is only 100 years later, in the same country, 47% of us lived on the farms, and 53% of us lived in the cities. In 2006, about 50 years later, 20% of us live on the farms. 80% live in cities. I mean, I had some kids over to my place a few years ago, and we were making a salad for a big celebration. And I asked one of the young men to go and get some lettuce. And this young guy said, "Can I have the car keys?" And I'm going, "But there's a garden right down here. That's where lettuce comes from." He said, "No, it comes from the IGA." So we're out of touch and out of practice with the natural cycle of life. And for me, that's one reason why many of us are a little bit frightened about a topic that we don't get to see very often. Does that make sense? We're just out of practice, that's all. So what I'm all about, and what I'm doing right now, is I'm writing a book called Embrace Your Death. A New Lease on Life. And the reason I'm helping people get the idea of embracing our death, how many people in this room and in the room over there have ever thought about saying something to somebody, but you held back and held off because you thought you had tomorrow? Anybody do that? Or am I the only crazy fool in town? Yeah. Especially the good stuff. Like, you know, with my parents, I sometimes just take them for granted. And I don't say, "Mom, I just love you. You're so cool," you know? Because I think I got tomorrow. So one of the main reasons I'm working on this Embrace Your Death thing is if we can all really get that one of these days we're going to be dead. And I got to tell you, I've done my research. Nobody's gotten off this planet alive. We're all in this thing together, and we're all one day going to die. That's just the way it is. The reason I like talking about it openly, though, is that because when we start to embrace our death, we start to talk about it, we can start to really feel life. Since I've taken on writing this book, I've had more fun, met more people, and more interesting people, and traveled more than I had when I wasn't talking about death. It's the weirdest thing. It's quite odd. Here's one little piece of information I'd love to pass on to you, by the way. We live in a bipolar planet. There's a North Pole and a South Pole. We live in a world of opposites, correct? Most of us believe that if we really like one of the opposites and we dislike the other, we can make the one we don't like go away. Right? We can push it away, we can deny it, we can jam it away, but it's not possible. If I don't like anger, and I stuff my anger and push it away, I also push away its opposite, which could be joy. It's almost like TV. If I see something on TV and it's on channel 13, I don't like it, and I pull the plug out, I can't watch channel 10 or channel 9. Human beings, we can't stuff one emotion and then randomly bring up another one. We stuff them all. Have you noticed? So what I got was, my goodness, if I'm in a bipolar planet, and I've got life that I really think I should embrace, but I don't want to look at death, I also diminish my death or my life. So I push death away, because I don't want to handle it. It's too scary. I don't want to own it. I don't want to think about it for my wife or my kids. I push it away. At the same time, I'm pushing life away. That may not make sense, so I'll explain it to you. If I'm afraid of death, if I'm afraid to die, if I'm afraid of closure, if I'm afraid of endings, different words, I won't take risks to begin something as fully if I didn't have that fear. For example, if I'm a fearful guy and I don't want to die, my son who's 17 and he's graduating from high school, he said to me, "Dad, the only thing I want for my graduation present is I want you to jump out of a plane with me." It's all bit. It's like, I don't want to jump out of a plane because I'm afraid I'm going to die. It's a safe thing to do. You know, it's very safe to jump out of planes with parachutes. So, not being afraid to die, I said to my son with a gulp, okay, honey, I'll jump with you. I'm willing to take a risk because I'm not afraid of death. Anybody here a little bit risk averse? Sure we are. Sure we are. All that means is we're holding back a little bit. We're frightened that we don't want to start something because it might end. Just pass that on to y'all that we can't push death away by itself. If we push death away, we push life away too. That's why my book title is Embrace Your Death, A New Lease on Life. Because if we're full of life, we're also full of death. I mean, in French, the word for orgasm is petit mort, a little death. So we're conceived. We're born or birthed with a little death in us. Okay. Anybody here a little bit afraid of death? And be honest, put your hands up so I can see you. Anybody a little bit of, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. It's not, I mean, it makes sense to me that we would be slightly afraid of death because we don't experience it very often. We don't get any practice at it, for heaven's sakes. But I've got another hint for you, by the way. We always think about death as the big death, the death of the body. But you know there's a death of a day? It's called sunset. There's a beginning of a day. There's a death of a breath. There's a death of a relationship. There's a death of a career. I used to be a stockbroker down in Toronto. But I died in that career and became a social worker. So throughout our life and throughout our days, there are many little opportunities to practice completion or closure or endings. Little pieces that aren't quite as difficult as the death of a loved one. If we start to notice, wow, in my life, I mean, how many times have you started something and it's ended? Lots. Every day you start. You wake up and it's morning. You go to bed and you die till you sleep. So every day you could start to get the idea, wow, is there anything I'm holding back in my life this day? Do that before you fall asleep. And you give yourself a chance to practice closure. Yeah, there is. I should have phoned my mom. I get up, I go call my mom. So that kind of thing you can practice regularly and ongoingly. Who here's been in more than one relationship? Hands up. I'll put both my hands up. God bless my wife. I think she's over there. Sorry, honey. So relationship starts, doesn't it? It begins. We fall in love. And sometimes relationships end. It's the birth of a relationship and the death of a relationship. Another opportunity to practice this monster we sometimes call death. So I'm just offering you these little glimpses at death that are different and not the big one. Because I know, I mean, my father died. If my sister Jody hadn't died on May the 5th, 1988, I wouldn't be here right now. I was a stockbroker. I was driving a BMW. I was making big money. I was drinking Courvoisier and all that fancy stuff in downtown Toronto. Smoking cigars, wing-tip shoes, horn-rimmed glasses, Hugo Boss suits. I was a stockbroker. My sister died. She was 36 years old. She was the most amazing woman I'd ever met in my life. Generous beyond belief. Huge heart. If you came to her and said, hey, I need a t-shirt, and she had one t-shirt left, she would have given it to you. She died of a brain aneurysm. Boom, she was gone one day suddenly. Like off the planet. And I thought, I got really angry with God. What are you doing? You bonehead? Come on, you took the wrong one. I'm a drinking, drugging, fast-driving Bay Street capitalist. You took the wrong one off the planet. I got very upset. I was very angry. It's called survivor's grief or survivor's anger. So upset with God. That was a big mistake. Anybody had that happen to you, by the way? Where somebody dies and you're just pissed off? It's good to do that, by the way. Gets it out of the body. You don't have to stuff it down. But when I was lowering my sister into the grave, because I was one of her pallbearers, I made a commitment to her. I said, honey, your death is not going to be in vain. I'm going to find out what the heck is going on with life. I'm going to figure this sucker out, and I'm going to quit my job on Bay Street. A year later, I left Bay Street. And I started a job as a social worker. And so the death of my sister actually was a birth for me. You get that? It's the weirdest thing. I feel sometimes still a little guilty about that. Because if my sister hadn't died, I wouldn't have woken up. Because with every death, there's always a new opening somewhere. And I saw it with my sister. And to this day, I'm thankful that she passed away. I miss her like crazy. She's the best hugger in the world. So I still miss her, but I'm so thankful. Because I got me, I got my life. I woke up. I took the opportunity that death brought me. I decided I was going to live my life fully. This is something that death can do for you if you let it, if you look at it. You can just start to get, wow. Every day when I wake up, I think this is my last day. It may not be, because I've been wrong a lot. But it could be my last day. I said to Rick today, this is the first time I met Rick. You know he's got 17 brothers and sisters? He's from Newfoundland. He's a cool guy, he's got a great heart. Right? Anybody else from Newfoundland? Good. I met Mary Walsh last night over at the Zoomer conference. She's really cool. Oh, does she have a room? Does she have a Falmouth? Anyway, that's a whole other story. But the point for saying this is, if I thought I had tomorrow, I might not have stopped with Rick and said hi and really put my attention on him, my hand on his shoulder and said, who are you? What do you do here? I actually got to know him, because I just don't know if I've got tomorrow. If I can embrace death, I often say I have death on my right shoulder. I carry it right here. It's an ally. It's a friend. It's an inspiration, really. Because when I look over here, I go, whoa, man, whew. Did I give everything I had today? Did I really let it rip? Did I come out of my skin? Was I really full of love and passion and joy? If I was angry, was I really angry? Or did I hold back? Did I pull myself back just a bit and save something for tomorrow that may never come? Anybody kind of save things for tomorrow? Like you hold your love back a little bit, especially we hold our love back a little bit. Oh, my wife she was just a bitch today and I'm going to hold back my love from her. Imagine dying, holding back your love from your loved one. That's why I say embrace your death. Park it over here, because you just never know. And if I live like every day is going to be my last, and it's not, what have I lost? Zero. I've gained because I've lived fully for 24 hours. It's such a gift. Can you guys get that? Does that make sense? This is, I mean, people think, well, what are you doing writing a book about death? It's not really about death at all. It's about accepting death so we can live an amazing, passionate